my name is Laura and welcome to my channel Boundless Books, my much neglected YouTube channel, I should say. But anyway, I'm back, you guys, with another video today, and I wanted to kind of catch you up on what I've been reading so far in 2018. I've been doing a fairly good job of keeping track of what I've been reading on Goodreads, so I thought it would be nice to just take a second, look back, and kind of round up my 5 favorite books that I've read so far in 2018. Now, these are not necessarily books that have come out in 2018, but these are books that I've read in 2018. And since I'm making up the rules, that's how I'm going to compile this list for you guys. I actually set a challenge for myself on Goodreads to read 50 books this year, which I feel like is very doable. Although I will say I started off the beginning of the year with a lot of momentum and I read a ton of books all at once, and I've hit a little bit of a slump so far, but hopefully I can get re-inspired with reading again and just pick back up the momentum and finish off the year strong. The first book that I would like to talk to you guys about today is called Just One Damn Thing After Another by Jodi Taylor. And this is the first book in the Chronicles of St. Mary's. Now, there are a whole slew of books in this series. So far, I've only read the first one, but overall, I have incredibly positive things to say about it. The book actually reminded me a lot of The Rook by Daniel O'Malley in terms of like the tone and the approach to the humor in it. In both cases, the books kind of follow a nerdy female protagonist who's involved in a secret society. Now, in the case of Just One Damn Thing After Another, the main character, Dr. Madeline Maxwell, or Max as she goes by for most of the book, is recruited at the beginning of the novel to join the secret society of historian time travelers called St. Mary's. Now, as you can imagine, a lot of historical hijinks then ensues, and this book is actually hilarious. It has very dry humor and a huge cast of characters. I actually think it should be called Just One Damned Character After Another. Ba-dum-ching. I found out after finishing the book, actually, that there's a whole glossary in the beginning of all the characters. So I wish I'd known that whilst I was reading it. Hot tip for you guys. My favorite aspects of this book were the dialogue between the many characters, as well as the actual plot itself was incredibly fast-paced. A lot of time travel plots can get incredibly convoluted, but I think that the author did a really good job of keeping it under control and creating a good system of rules around time travel. Honestly, there's something for everybody in this book. There's action, there's cool historical detail, there is good character development, and there's a little bit of a romance. Promise nothing overwhelming, but overall incredibly enjoyable and very fast-paced. The next book that I want to talk to you guys about is Ace of Shades by Amanda Foody. I love her last name. This is actually the first novel that I've read by Amanda Foody. She wrote another much beloved book called Daughter of the Burning City. People on Goodreads freaking love that book. And I tried reading it, but I got like 1 chapter, 2 chapters into it, and I kind of lost interest. That being said, I really enjoyed this book a lot, so I think it's going to inspire me to try and reread that book again. But one thing that I have noticed is a lot of people that don't like the Ace of Shades seem to really like Daughter of the Burning City, so I feel like it might be like a one or the other kind of situation. So this book is set in a fictitious world, which I would say roughly resembles sort of 1800s England, maybe mixed with a little bit of New Orleans or Venice thrown in there in terms of the amount of vice rampant in the city. I read this incredibly quickly, and I love the 2 protagonists in the story who actually take turns narrating the plot. And they are N. Salta and Levi Glacier. And at the beginning of the novel, we find out that N is leaving her hometown and traveling to the city of Sin, New Rains, in order to find her adoptive mother, Lourdes. N kind of falls into hard times, gets her luggage stolen, and eventually ends up reaching out to Levi to help her in her search for her mother. Now, Levi is a direct foil for N. He is very enmeshed in the sinful world of New Rains. He actually runs one of the gangs there. He is the head of the Irons, which is the gang that kind of controls a lot of the card houses in New Rains. In terms of the magical system in this book, all of the characters are gifted with 2 talents. One is their blood talent, their primary talent, and the other is a split talent, which they have slightly less affinity for. Overall, I really did like this book. It is unfortunately the start of a series, and I think the next book doesn't come out until spring of 2019. So I'm probably going to have to read this again before the next book comes out, because undoubtedly I'll have forgotten everything about the plot by the time the next one's ready for me to read. The next book that I want to talk to you guys about is Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. I know, I'm probably like the last person in BookTube to have read this book. But I was inspired to start reading this because the movie came out recently, and I wanted to have read the book before I went to go see the movie. And I knew that if I saw the movie first, I just wouldn't be as motivated to read the actual book. And I will say, if you're deciding between the book and the movie, I would definitely say pick one or the other. If you end up reading the book, you're probably not going to enjoy the movie the same way that you would if you have nothing to compare it to. So to briefly summarize what this book is about, if you don't already know, it's set in the future in 2045, where the world's kind of screwed up. It's a dystopian version of the future where resources are all gone and the world's pretty screwed in terms of its future. That being said, the one outlet for people is this immersive video game world called the Oasis. The book follows a young man called Wade Watts who is living in the slums of Ohio, and he is obsessed with finding the legendary Easter egg hidden by the creator of the Oasis, James Halliday. And the person who does find the Easter egg will be granted ownership of the whole Oasis. One of the reasons why I think this book is so beloved is that it is so chock full of 80s nerd references. That being said, my biggest complaint about this book, and don't hate on me, I just thought the writing was a little sloppy, especially in the beginning. Lots of information dumps to kind of like give you all that you needed to understand the story in the beginning. But all that being said, I really enjoyed this book. It was super fun. I read through it incredibly quickly, and I would definitely recommend it if you haven't read it yet. Okay, moving right along, the next book that I want to talk about is Defy the Stars by Claudia Gray. So this is actually the start of a sci-fi series. The second book is already out, and I've already read it, and I loved it just as much as the first book. The novel follows two different characters, Naomi Vidal and Abel. This is set in a dystopian future where Earth is basically uninhabitable and pretty much out of resources. The population is booming and has nowhere to go. So many people have left Earth and gone through this wormhole called the Gate and found another planet called Genesis where they have colonized. And Genesis is great. It still has a lot of its resources. However, the people on Genesis don't really want everyone from Earth to kind of come there and invade. As a result, Earth and Genesis are kind of locked in this bitter battle over resources and who has control over the planet Genesis. Naomi Vidal is a fighter for Genesis, and she's pretty determined to keep her planet from being overridden by the people of Earth. On the flip side, the narrative is also told by a character called Abel, who is actually an android created by Burton Mason, who runs Mason Industries of Earth, and he's a special prototype. Now, Burton Mason has created a whole slew of different types of androids, all fighting on behalf of Earth. However, Abel's a little bit different. He's a little bit more lifelike. He seems to exhibit a little bit more of an emotional response and autonomy than the rest of the androids. And throughout the course of the novel, he goes on a journey of basically self-discovery in terms of figuring out who he is and what it means to be human. So one thing that I will caution you is that I found the first chapter of this book a little boring, a little bit of an information dump, kind of chaotic, and I almost put it down, but I'm so glad I stuck with it because the second the narration switches over to Abel for the first time, smooth sailing from then on out. Alright, the last book on my list is a historical fiction book. I know how much you guys love historical fiction on this channel, and this book was actually recommended to me by one of my viewers, so thank you so much. I absolutely love this book. And it is called The Blind Contessa's New Machine by Carey Wallace. This book is set in 19th century Italy and follows the purported first inventor of the typewriter, Pellegrino Turri. The novel is actually told from the perspective of Turri's next door neighbor, the Contessa Carolina. Carolina is young and starting off with her life when she meets Turri and forms a friendship with him. However, very quickly, Carolina recognizes that her eyesight is failing her and she is going blind. And I should caution that this book is just heart-wrenching. It's short, but it does pack an emotional punch. And if you're expecting this story to end with a nice little bow, it doesn't. It definitely leaves you in sort of emotional turmoil. That doesn't mean, though, that I didn't like this book. I really liked it. I read it in like a day. I absolutely could not put it down. I'm pretty sure I stayed up till like 3 a.m. reading it. And I think what was compelling about this book, even more so than any historical details, was actually the descriptions of Carolina's journey as she loses her eyesight and comes to realize what the world means to her and what it means to visualize herself in this new world where she can no longer see. So I wouldn't recommend reading this on a day when you need a pick-me-up. It's definitely not the world's happiest book, but it's really emotionally gripping. So if you want something that's going to keep you engaged and just kind of pack an emotional punch in a short period of time, would definitely recommend this novel. All right, there you guys have it. Those are some books that I've read recently and really enjoyed. I'm going to continue posting books that I'm reading to Goodreads, so if you guys don't already follow me there, I'll leave a link to my Goodreads in the description box down below. So I would recommend you check that out because I'm a lot better about keeping everyone updated there. So if you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to my channel so you can stay up to date with all of my latest content. And until the next one, my name is Laura, and thank you guys so much for watching. Bye. In the case of just one damn thing after another, God, saying that name like 10 times in a row is very difficult. I'm going to butcher it, I'm sure, throughout the course of this video. But anyway, bear with me.